It's actually really, really hard to put muscle mass, especially on a teenage girl. You have to be on a really, really strict diet. You would have to be spending lots and lots of hours in the gym. Like, you would almost have to do it full time. First presentation you guys have today is obviously with me. It is performance for the female athlete. Anyone who has been coached by me before, a lot of this stuff will look familiar. And that's because the training principles that we go over don't often change. You will notice through a lot of the other resources that you get, like through TikTok or Instagram, or even just programs that sort of get marketed towards you guys, that how you should train changes all the time. The reality is it actually stays really similar, and it evolves really slowly with research. So that's some of the things that we're going to go over today. There were female athletes at the highest level of their sport, where they should be the most resourced, with incredibly high expectations and just not enough resources. The photo of the athlete here on the left her name is Katie. So when I first started off in a semi-professional football club, I had Katie, who had a stress fracture in her foot. Has anyone heard of that injury before? Yeah, it's a pretty lengthy one. Takes a long time to get over. But she had a stress fracture in her foot, and it didn't really matter what we did to try and help it out. It just wouldn't get better. Like, it flared up all the time. We would rest, we'd do treatment, we'd do strength work, and it just continually flared up. And then one day at training, in the middle of trying to get her foot better, I ran into the change rooms because my period got here 3 days early, as they tend to do. And I just put a blanket comment out to the change room. I was like, "Oh, does anyone have a tampon?" And Katie just goes, "Oh, I haven't had my period in 4 months. I don't carry those around with me anymore." And I was like, okay, well, that's a red flag. But because I was fresh out of the industry, and because the program I was in didn't have the resources to educate me on that stuff either, that information didn't get to her. So we dug into it a little bit more, and she had an exit meeting the previous year with a coach who I am still a really big fan of, like, wanted nothing but the best for her. He said that, she's very draftable. She was really close to breaking into the AFLW, but the one thing that she needed to work on was her fitness, and just made a comment that she didn't look like the other AFLW girls. And so Katie really wanted to get drafted, was really, really dedicated to doing that. So she went online. She found a life coach instead of an S&C coach or a dietitian, who put her on 1,200 calories a day and then extra training on top of the program that she was already doing. And so what Katie ended up with was, instead of, she definitely lost weight like she was trying to do, but she also came back to me with an eating disorder and a stress fracture, which eventually ended her footy career. And so I was like, okay, well, I currently work with like 6 programs. I was working with over 100 girls at the time. And I was like, that's not ever going to happen on my watch again. So I screened all of the girls that I had in either the current program or the program that I followed through the next year. And about 70% of them came back with either a flag for an eating disorder, an active eating disorder, or the history of an eating disorder. And the only reason that happened is because there's not enough resources for you guys. So what I then have, tried to do is replicate within the summit what you guys would get at a professional level. Because if Katie was in AFLW and she was this close, I had clubs asking me about her, that conversation wouldn't have happened, or it would have happened in a very different way with very different people. If it was something that did need to change, she would have been sent straight to her high performance manager, who would have looked after all of her load, and she would have been sent to the club dietitian to manage all of that. If it did become a problem, she then would have been able to see the club sports psych, and all of that would have just been handed to her. And there's, again, no reason why that should not be accessible to you guys. I'll go over a few of the reasons as to why I think that is the case today. But that's the gap that I'm trying to close. So for studies in athletic performance over the last 5 years, this included Australia, Europe, and America. 63% were conducted in male subjects only. 33 were in male and female, and then that left 3% for us. So if we flick through again, you can see here that this broke it down into what those were what the research was relating to. So based on these graphs here, we are creatures who get sick. We're very social. And because we sometimes play sport, we sometimes get injured. We know that there's a little bit more to it than that. But that slide is up there because I wanted to reiterate to you guys that a lot of what I see pushed to you guys on the internet speaks in absolutes. It's like you absolutely need to be eating more during this time of your period, or you absolutely need to be, covering this many Ks to lose this much weight. We don't know that. There is a lot of great work being done to close that gap now. But the reality is that what we learn is going to be very slow over the next few years. Because for research to have any validity, it actually needs to be recreated. Whereas at the moment, there's now just a bit more funding being put into women's sport, but we don't really have all of the information. We haven't had it reproduced yet to actually speak in any absolutes. That doesn't go for everything, but I just wanted to put that in front of you guys just to sort of teach you to look at things critically as they come across your screen. The lowest paid WNBA player gets paid 3.4% of what the highest NBA player gets. And so that just means that you guys then need to be, there's other things for you to think about. There's extra load that goes into you guys just from a day-to-day basis, which means you naturally can't spend as much money or spend as much time improving your sport. It's actually really, really hard to put muscle mass, especially on a teenage girl. You have to be on a really, really strict diet. You would have to be spending lots and lots of hours in the gym. Like you would almost have to do it full time to get from this to this straight away. This has been a change in Shani over 7 years. And so I think that if, you are getting this narrative fed to you often that, your strength training is going to change the way that you look, it might a little bit, but it's certainly not going to, overnight change your entire body structure. It just can't happen. And so I think to finish off, what you need to make your sport better isn't always going to line up with what you see online. And it's not always going to look the same. Like if I did the exact same program as Shani, there's absolutely no chance I'm going to look like that. So that kind of just goes back to the fact that everything that you need as an athlete is highly individual to you. If nothing else, I want you to apply these principles in a way that works for you. And hopefully off the back of all of this, you now have the ability to actually spot what is good for you and what isn't. Because again, I think that's going to go a long way for you guys being able to close that gap.